The emergency meeting room buzzed with tension. Commander Vexthor stood at the front, his 4 eyes scanning the gathered instructors. His silver scales caught the light as he moved, and his tail swished back and forth with obvious worry. He had called this meeting because of a problem nobody knew how to solve. "We have a situation," Vexthor began. His voice came through the translator device, turning his clicking speech into words everyone could understand. 3 days ago, the Rheinolf government sent us their royal cubs. It was supposed to be a sign of peace and friendship between our people. The instructors shifted in their seats. Everyone had heard about the cubs. The whole academy was talking about them. "These cubs are destroying everything," Vexthor continued. "They have injured 2 of our best handlers. They have torn apart 3 training rooms. They refuse to listen to any commands we give them. They will not eat the food we prepare. They attack anyone who comes near them." Instructor Quinma spoke up. Her form shimmered as she moved, changing between solid and transparent. "Commander, the Rheinolf are predators from one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. Their cubs are wild until they grow up. These 3 are only 7 years old. They will not be fully mature for another 13 years. "I know this," Vexthor said, "but we cannot send them back. The Rheinolf ambassadors would see it as an insult. Our alliance with them is still new and fragile. If we fail with these cubs, we might lose the Rheinolf as allies forever." Another instructor, a crystalline being named Krell, leaned forward. "What can we do? Our handlers are trained for many species, but nothing like this. The cubs are too strong, too fast, and too aggressive." Vexthor pulled up a holographic screen. The room watched as security footage played. 3 creatures moved across the screen, each one covered in dark green and black scales. They were low to the ground, built like the big cats from Earth, but larger and more muscular. Their eyes glowed amber in the dim light. Their teeth were long and sharp. Their claws left marks on the metal floors. In the video, a handler tried to approach with food. The largest cub charged at him, roaring. The handler barely escaped through a door. Another clip showed all 3 cubs climbing the walls, moving along the ceiling like they had no respect for gravity. A third clip showed them working together to break through an energy barrier that should have held them. "They are magnificent hunters," Quinma said quietly. "Even at this young age, their instincts are perfect. They are a danger to everyone in this academy," Krell countered. "We have students from 17 different species here. Some of our cadets are small and fragile. If these cubs get loose in the general population, someone will die." Vexthor nodded slowly. "Which is why I have made a decision. We will assign them to a single cadet handler, someone young enough that the cubs might accept them, but skilled enough to keep control." The room erupted in protest. Instructors spoke over each other, their voices rising. "You want to give 3 deadly predators to a student? That is too dangerous." "No cadet has the training for this." Vexthor raised one of his forearms, calling for silence. "I have reviewed every cadet file in this academy. There is one person who might succeed where our professional handlers have failed." The holographic screen changed. Now it showed a young woman with reddish-brown hair pulled back from her face. Her eyes were green and bright. She wore the blue uniform of a second-year cadet. In her official photo, she was smiling. "This is Cadet Lynn Harper. She is human, 22 years old. She comes from Earth, a Category 11 death world." Krell studied the image. "Humans are new to the Federation. We know almost nothing about them." "We know their world is extremely dangerous," Vexthor replied. "It has predators, diseases, weather patterns, and geological events that would kill most species. Humans evolved to survive all of it. They are tougher than they look." He pulled up Lynn's academic record. Cadet Harper is top of her class in xenobiology. She has written multiple papers on predator behavior across different species. Her communication scores are exceptional, but most importantly, look at her background. The screen showed information about Lynn's childhood. She had grown up near a place called a wildlife rehabilitation center. She had spent years working with dangerous animals from her home world. Creatures with names like wolves, bears, mountain lions, and crocodiles. She has experience with predators, Vexthor explained. She understands how they think and behave. She is not afraid of them. In fact, according to her personal statement, she loves working with them. Quinma's form flickered with uncertainty. "But Commander, this is still just one young cadet against 3 Rheinolf cubs. What if she fails? What if she gets hurt or killed? Then we will have lost a promising cadet," Vexthor said bluntly. "But if we do nothing, we will lose the Rheinolf alliance. We will lose the trust of a powerful warrior species. The political damage would be severe." He looked around the room at each instructor. I am not making this decision lightly. I have watched hours of footage of Cadet Harper. I have read all her papers. I have spoken to her instructors. She has something special, an ability to connect with other species that goes beyond training or knowledge. Krell's crystalline body reflected the light as he considered this. When will you tell her? I am calling her to my office within the hour, Vexthor said. If she agrees, she will start immediately. The cubs are currently contained in Training Bay 7, but we cannot keep them locked up forever. They need space, stimulation, and proper care. The meeting ended shortly after. The instructors filed out, speaking quietly among themselves. Most of them thought this plan would fail. Some worried that Lynn Harper would be the fourth casualty of the Renolth cubs. Others wondered if this human really had some special gift that the rest of them lacked. Vexthor remained in the meeting room after everyone left. He looked at Lynn's photo on the screen. She seemed so young, so small, so fragile compared to the cubs she would face. But there was something in her eyes. A confidence, a warmth, a fearlessness that came not from ignorance but from genuine understanding. He had not told the other instructors everything. He had not mentioned that every other species in the academy had tried and failed with the cubs. He had not shared that the Renolth ambassadors had given them 1 month. 1 month to show progress, or the cubs would be removed and the alliance would suffer. He had not explained that Lynn Harper was not just their best choice. She was their only choice. The cubs had ignored every command given to them. They had responded to force with greater force. They had met fear with aggression. They had rejected every attempt to control or contain them. Now they would meet someone different. Someone who did not see them as problems to be solved or dangers to be managed. Someone who saw them as scared children far from home, acting the only way they knew how. Vexthor hoped he was making the right decision. He hoped that human instinct and Renolth instinct would somehow find common ground. He hoped that Lynn Harper's smile in that photo meant she had the courage and compassion this job would require. Because if she failed, the consequences would reach far beyond 1 cadet or 3 cubs. The future of galactic cooperation hung in the balance, and everything now depended on a young human woman who had spent her childhood talking to wolves. Lynn walked through the corridors of the Galactic Naval Academy with quick steps. A message had appeared on her personal device 15 minutes ago, summoning her to Commander Vexthor's office immediately. She had no idea what this was about, but a private meeting with the Academy commander was not normal. Her mind raced through possibilities as she walked. Had she done something wrong in her last training exercise? Was there a problem with her research paper on Earthian pack behavior? Had something happened to her family back on Earth? She reached the commander's office and pressed the alert button. The door slid open with a soft hiss. "Cadet Harper, come in," Vexthor's voice called. Lynn entered and stood at attention. The commander's office was large, with windows showing the stars beyond the Academy station. Vexthor sat behind a desk that looked too small for his large frame. His 4 eyes blinked at her in sequence. "At ease, Cadet," he said. "Please, sit down." Lynn sat in the chair across from him, keeping her back straight despite the permission to relax. Years of training made good posture automatic. "Sir, is there a problem?" she asked. "Not with you," Vexthor replied. "Tell me, what do you know about the Renolth?" Lynn's mind shifted gears immediately. This was about xenobiology, her specialty. The Renolth are a carnivorous species from Renolth Prime. Their homeworld has high gravity and dense jungle coverage. They are obligate hunters with complex pack social structures. Their culture values honor and strength. The Federation made first contact with them 2 years ago, and we are currently working to build a strong alliance. Vexthor's tail moved in what Lynn had learned was approval. Very good. Now 3 Renolth cubs arrived at the Academy last week. They are here as part of a cultural exchange program. Unfortunately, they are proving extremely difficult to handle. He activated a holographic display. Lynn watched footage from the past several days. 3 sleek, scaled creatures moved across the screen. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Their movements were fluid and powerful. Their eyes held clear intelligence. But they were also destroying everything around them. She watched handlers try to approach with food. The cubs attacked. She watched handlers try to use energy barriers. The cubs broke through them. She watched as the creatures climbed walls, leaped impossible distances, and worked together with perfect coordination. "They are scared," Lynn said, leaning forward to study the screen more carefully. Vexthor's eyes widened slightly. Explain. Look at their body language, Lynn pointed to the screen. Their ear positions are back and flat. They keep their backs together, protecting each other. When they attack, they are not hunting. They are defending. Everything here is wrong for them. The smells, the sounds, the lights, the people. They do not understand what is happening or why they are here, so they react the only way they know how, by trying to protect themselves. You see frightened children where everyone else sees dangerous monsters, Vexthor observed. Lynn smiled. I grew up around dangerous animals, sir. My mother worked at a wildlife rehabilitation center on Earth. I spent most of my childhood helping her care for predators. Wolves, bears, big cats, even crocodiles. People always thought they were just dangerous, but they were usually just scared or hurt or confused. She looked back at the screen, where one of the cubs was pacing along a wall. These cubs are babies. They are 7 years old. They have been taken from their home, put on a ship, brought to a station full of aliens they have never seen before. Nobody speaks their language properly. Nobody understands what they need. Of course they are acting out. Vexthor leaned forward, all 4 eyes focused on her. Cadet Harper, I am assigning you as the official handler for these 3 cubs. You will be responsible for their care, their training, and their integration into academy life. This is a special assignment that will take priority over your normal studies. Lynn felt her heart jump. This was huge. This was the kind of opportunity most cadets only dreamed about. But it was also incredibly dangerous and carried enormous responsibility. Sir, she said carefully, I am honored that you would consider me, but I am only a second-year cadet. There are instructors with far more experience than me. None of them looked at that footage and saw scared children, Vexthor replied. They saw problems, dangers, threats. You saw beings who need help and understanding. That is what these cubs need. Not someone trying to control them. Someone trying to understand them. Lynn thought about this. She thought about the cubs, alone and terrified in a strange place. She thought about how they must feel, torn from everything they knew. She remembered how the wounded wolf had looked at her when she was 12 years old, how it had been snarling and snapping at everyone until she sat down quietly beside its cage and just waited. Patient, calm, showing it that she meant no harm. I will do it, she said. When do I start? Right now, Vexthor said. The cubs are in Training Base 7. I will have your belongings moved to quarters near their habitat. You will be spending most of your time with them from this point forward. Lynn stood and saluted. I will not let you down, sir. I know you will not, Vexthor replied. But Cadet Harper, one more thing. These cubs are royalty on their world. Their parents are powerful leaders. The success or failure of this assignment will affect relations between the Rhinoth and the Federation. Do you understand what that means? Yes, sir, Lynn said. It means I need to get this right. 20 minutes later, Lynn stood outside Training Base 7. Through the thick, reinforced window, she could see the 3 cubs. They were huddled in the far corner of the large room. Their scales looked darker than in the footage, which she recognized as a stress response. They snapped at each other occasionally, but mostly they just sat there, radiating misery. A security officer stood next to her. His name was Gorn, and he was built like a tank. His species was naturally strong and tough, but even he looked nervous. You are really going in there? He asked. Those things nearly killed Handler Plix yesterday. Took his whole arm in their jaws before we could stun them off him. I am going in, Lynn confirmed. Can you tell me their names? Gorn consulted a data pad. The big one is Kresh. Male. The one with scars on her left shoulder is Vera. Female. The smallest one is Thorn. Also male. He is the most aggressive of the 3. Lynn nodded, memorizing the information. She studied each cub carefully, noting the differences in their markings and body shapes. Kresh was indeed the largest, with broader shoulders and a heavier build. Bara was sleeker, built for speed. Thorn was smaller but more compact, all muscle and tension. I am going in alone, Lynn said. No weapons, no barriers, nothing. Gorn's eyes went wide. That is against every safety protocol we have. The protocols are part of why they are so scared, Lynn replied gently. They need to see that someone trusts them. If I go in armed with barriers, treating them like dangerous criminals, I am just another threat. But if I go in open and vulnerable, showing them I believe they will not hurt me, that changes everything. Or they kill you in the first 30 seconds, Gorn muttered. Lynn smiled at him. If something goes wrong, You have authorization to stun me and the cubs. But give me 10 minutes first, please. Before Gorn could argue further, Lynn coded in her authorization and the door opened. She stepped through into the training bay. The door sealed behind her with a solid click. 3 sets of glowing amber eyes locked onto her immediately. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. A low, rumbling growl filled the air, coming from all 3 cubs at once. Their lips pulled back, showing rows of sharp teeth designed to tear flesh. Lynn stopped just inside the door. She did not move toward them. She did not raise her hands or make any sudden movements. She just stood there, her arms relaxed at her sides, her posture open and non-threatening. She did not stare directly at the cubs. Instead, she kept her gaze soft, slightly averted, looking past them rather than at them. The growling got louder. Kresh took a step forward. His scales rippled with patterns that Lynn knew meant aggression and warning. He was telling her to leave or face the consequences. Lynn did something that would be studied by xenopsychologists for years to come. She smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a fake smile, a real, genuine, warm smile of happiness. And then she sat down on the floor, crossing her legs, and simply waited. The cubs froze. The growling faltered and stopped. Confusion showed in every line of their bodies. This was not how any of the handlers had acted. Those others had been tense, afraid, aggressive. This strange, 2-legged creature seemed completely calm. Outside the bay, Gorn watched in disbelief. He had his hand on the stun controls, ready to fire at the first sign of an attack. But the attack was not coming. Instead, the cubs were just standing there, staring at this crazy human who had sat down on the floor like she was at a picnic. Lynn began to hum. It was a simple melody, wordless, something her mother used to hum when working with frightened animals. The sound was soft and soothing, with a gentle rhythm that spoke of safety and peace. Thorn moved first. Despite being the smallest, he was the boldest. He circled around the edge of the room, giving Lynn a wide space but coming closer. His nostrils flared as he scented the air, gathering information about this strange new being. Lynn continued humming. She did not turn her head to watch him. She did not react at all. She understood what he was doing. He was investigating. Vara followed her brother, approaching from the opposite side of the room. The 2 cubs created a classic hunting pattern, coming at Lynn from 2 directions at once. It was pure instinct, the behavior of predators who had been hunting together since birth. But Lynn did not react with fear. She kept humming that soft melody, kept that gentle smile on her face. Minutes passed. The tension in the training bay slowly began to ease. Outside, Gorn was joined by other security officers and several instructors who had heard about what was happening. They crowded around the viewport, watching in amazement. Kresh remained in the back, observing. He was the protector, the careful one. He would let his smaller siblings test this new situation first. His amber eyes tracked every movement, every breath. Thorn came closer. His movements were cautious now, curious rather than aggressive. He stretched his neck out, sniffing at Lynn's shoulder. His whiskers twitched as he processed her scent. Up close, Lynn could see the beautiful pattern of his scales, each one slightly different from the next. She could see the intelligence in his eyes, the confusion mixed with interest. "Hey there," she whispered, keeping her voice as soft as her humming had been. "You have had a really hard time, have you not? Everything is strange and scary and nothing makes sense." Thorn jerked back at the sound of her voice, but he did not run. He stayed close, his head tilted, trying to understand. Lynn very slowly raised one hand. She kept her palm up, fingers relaxed. It was an offering, not a threat, a gesture that said she meant no harm. For a long moment, nothing happened. The entire training bay was silent except for the quiet sound of breathing. Then Thorn took one step closer and pressed his snout into Lynn's palm. His scales were warm and surprisingly smooth. Lynn could feel the rush of his breath against her skin. She could feel the slight tremor running through his powerful body. He was still scared, still uncertain, but he was choosing to trust her. She remained perfectly still, letting him investigate at his own pace. Vera approached next, encouraged by her brother's bravery. She sniffed at Lynn's other hand, then at her face, her hair. Lynn felt the tickle of whiskers against her cheek. She felt the wet nose touching her skin, gathering information. The cub's breath smelled like meat and something else, something wild and sharp. And then Lynn did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She laughed. It was not a nervous laugh or a forced one. It was pure delight. Because despite the danger, despite the enormous responsibility on her shoulders, Lynn was exactly where she wanted to be. She was with creatures that everyone else feared, helping them feel safe for the first time in days. The cubs jumped back at the unexpected sound. Their muscles tensed, ready to flee or fight. But they did not run away. Instead, they watched her with clear fascination. This strange being made sounds they had never heard before, sounds that felt warm and safe somehow. Kresh finally moved from his position at the back. The largest of the three approached with more caution than his siblings. His eyes never left Lynn's face as he came closer. He was reading her, judging her, deciding if she could be trusted. When he reached her, he did something remarkable. He lowered his great head and pressed it against her shoulder. Lynn knew from her research that this was a gesture of trust in Reynolds culture. It meant he accepted her presence. It meant he was willing to be vulnerable with her. She slowly lifted her hand and rested it on his scaled head. The heat of his body radiated through her palm. She could feel the power in him, the strength that could kill her in a heartbeat if he chose. But she also felt the gentleness as he leaned into her touch. "Good boy," she murmured. "You are all such good kids. Just scared and far from home, but it is going to be okay. I promise you that. I am going to take care of you." Outside the training bay, Gorn was already calling Commander Vexthor on his communication device. "Sir, you need to come see this right now." Within the hour, a crowd had gathered at the viewport. Instructors and cadets pressed close, trying to see inside. What they saw seemed impossible. Lynn Harper sat on the floor of Training Bay 7 with 3 deadly Rhinoth cubs curled around her. Kresh had his large head in her lap. Vara was pressed against her side. Thorn lay across her feet. All of them were calm for the first time since arriving at the academy. Lynn was talking to them in a soft voice, her hand moving in slow strokes along Kresh's scales. The cubs made small sounds in response, rumbling purrs that vibrated through the floor. "How did she do it?" Instructor Quinma asked, her shimmering form flickering with amazement. Commander Vexthor watched the scene with all 4 eyes. She showed them something they had not seen from anyone else here. She showed them kindness without fear. She showed them trust without conditions. "But she is so small," another instructor said. "So fragile. Any one of those cubs could kill her." "They could," Vexthor agreed. "But they will not. Because she has given them no reason to. She came to them with open hands and an open heart. She sat down on their level instead of standing over them. She waited for them to come to her instead of forcing herself on them. She respected their fear and their need for space." Inside the bay, Lynn was learning about each cub's personality through simple observation. Kresh liked being touched on his head and behind his ear ridges. Vara kept bringing her small objects she found around the room, presenting them like gifts. Thorn stayed closest, his body pressed against hers, needing the most reassurance. "You are Thorn," Lynn said, gently touching the smallest cub's shoulder. He looked up at her with those glowing amber eyes. "You are the brave one, are you not? You came to me first. You took the biggest risk." Thorn made a small chirping sound. Lynn smiled, already beginning to learn their language. She noticed something else too. Thorn held his right rear leg at an odd angle. When she gently touched it, he flinched away. "You are hurt," Lynn said softly. "That is why you have been so angry, is it not? You are in pain." She made a mental note to have the medical staff check Thorn's leg. Pain could explain a lot of aggressive behavior. An injured predator was a dangerous predator because fear and pain were closely linked. As the hours passed, Lynn slowly stood up. The cubs moved with her, staying close. She walked around the training bay and they followed. She sat down again and they settled around her. She was establishing herself as part of their pack, someone they could depend on and follow. "We are going to take this slow," she told them. "I know everything is scary right now, but I am going to help you understand this place. I am going to teach you how things work here. And I am going to make sure you are safe and happy." Farah chirped and rubbed her head against Lynn's arm. The gesture was so much like a cat that Lynn had to smile. These fierce predators had kitten-like moments when they felt secure. By the time evening came, Lynn had not left the training bay. Food was brought to the door, both for her and for the cubs. The cubs had refused to eat anything the handlers offered before. But when Lynn sat with them and ate her own meal, they cautiously approached the meat that had been prepared for them. Kresh ate first, as the dominant cub. Then Vara. Thorn waited until last as the lowest in the current pack order. Lynn watched this carefully, understanding the social dynamics at play. "Tomorrow we will start exploring," Lynn said as the cubs settled down for sleep. "We will go slow, just a little bit at a time, but you need to see that this place is not so scary. There are good people here who want to be your friends." Thorn curled up against her side, his warm body pressed close. Vara rested her head on Lynn's leg. Kresh positioned himself between his siblings and the door, still protective even in sleep. Lynn knew she probably should go to her new quarters. She needed rest. She needed to plan for the days ahead, but she could not bring herself to leave. These cubs had finally found some peace. If her presence gave them that, she would stay. Outside the viewport, Commander Vexthor remained long after the other observers had left. He watched the young human woman surrounded by predators, all of them sleeping peacefully. "You were right," Instructor Quinma said quietly, appearing beside him. "She was the right choice." "She has only taken the first step," Vexthor replied. "The hard work begins tomorrow. She must teach them to function in our world while respecting what they are. She must bridge two completely different species and cultures. She must turn 3 terrified, aggressive cubs into confident young beings who can thrive here." "Do you think she can do it?" Quinma asked. Vexthor watched as Lynn shifted slightly in her sleep, and all 3 cubs adjusted their positions to stay close to her. They trusted her completely already. That was more progress than anyone else had made in days of trying. "Yes," he said finally, "I think she can. Because she does not see this as a job or an assignment. She sees it as a privilege. And that makes all the difference." The next 3 weeks changed everything. Lynn's entire life became focused on the 3 cubs. She moved into the quarters next to their habitat. A small room with basic furniture but close enough that she could hear if they became distressed. She spent every waking hour with them, learning their sounds, their moods, their needs. Kresh was the thinker. He watched everything carefully before acting. Lynn noticed he always positioned himself between his siblings and anything new or potentially dangerous. When she introduced them to other cadets, Kresh was the one who studied the newcomers first, deciding if they were safe. Lynn worked with him on trust exercises. She would bring cadets from different species to meet the cubs, always starting with the ones who were calm and confident. Kresh learned that not every new person was a threat. His favorite reward was a special protein mixture that the Academy synthesized to match the taste of prey from Ranulth Prime. When Lynn scratched behind his ear ridges in the right spot, he would close his eyes and make a deep rumbling sound that meant contentment. Vara was the curious one. She loved puzzles and games. Lynn spent hours creating challenges for her, hiding food in containers that Vara had to figure out how to open. The cub's intelligence was remarkable. She could solve problems that stumped some of the Academy's adult students. Lynn taught Vara hand signals and verbal commands in both Federation Standard and Rhinolf. The cub picked them up faster than Lynn expected. Within a week, Vara could respond to basic instructions. Sit, stay, come, follow. She seemed to enjoy the mental stimulation, the challenge of learning new things. Vara also had an interesting habit. She would bring Lynn gifts. At first it was pieces of torn fabric from the training bay. Then it was small objects she found during their walks through the academy. A dropped stylus, a piece of decorative metal from a wall panel. Once she even brought Lynn someone's lost datapad, presenting it with obvious pride. Lynn always accepted these gifts with praise, understanding it was Vara's way of showing affection. Thorn was the complicated one. His aggression, Lynn discovered, had a source. On their 3rd day together, she convinced him to let her examine his right rear leg more carefully. She found an old injury that had not healed properly. The bone had set wrong, causing him constant pain. Getting Thorn to the medical bay was a challenge. He did not trust the medical staff. He growled and snapped when they approached. But Lynn sat with him, holding his head in her lap, talking to him softly while they worked. The doctors gave him medication for the pain and did a minor surgery to correct the bone alignment. The change in Thorn was dramatic. Within days of the treatment, his aggressive outbursts nearly stopped. He was still the most protective of the 3, still the quickest to react to perceived threats, but the constant edge of anger was gone. Thorn became Lynn's shadow. Wherever she went, he followed. His amber eyes watched her constantly. If anyone approached Lynn too quickly or too close, Thorn would place himself between them, a clear warning. Lynn worked with him on this. teaching him that not everyone was a danger to her. The academy adjusted to its unusual new students. Lynn collaborated with instructors to create training protocols that worked for Rinalth cubs. The cubs learned to walk through corridors without causing chaos. They attended certain classes, lying quietly at the back of the room while Lynn took notes. They learned to be around other species without aggression. But there were setbacks. There were moments when everything seemed to fall apart. The worst incident happened during a tactical training exercise in week 4. Lynn had brought the cubs to observe, hoping to expose them to more cadets in a controlled environment. A Vornian cadet named Zex was demonstrating combat techniques at the front of the room. Everything was fine until the instructor activated a holographic display. The image showed a Rinalth hunting ground with territorial markers clearly visible. These markers were scent and visual signals that Rinalth packs used to define their territory. Kresh saw the markers and reacted instantly. He charged forward with a roar that shook the room. Vara and Thorn joined him immediately, the 3 cubs forming an aggressive line. Their scales went fully dark. Their teeth were bared. They looked ready to attack. The room erupted into chaos. Cadets scattered in all directions. Instructors reached for stun weapons. Alarms began to sound. "Stop!" Lynn shouted, moving quickly between the cubs and the cadets. "Everyone freeze right now." Her voice cut through the panic. Both sides obeyed. The cubs held their position but did not advance. The cadets stopped running. The instructors lowered their weapons but kept them ready. Lynn looked at Kresh, reading his body language. His scales were fully raised. His pupils were dilated. But he was not looking at Zex or any of the cadets. He was looking at the holographic display behind them. Understanding hit her like a physical blow. "Turn off the hologram," Lynn ordered. "Do it now." The instructor complied. The image vanished. Immediately the cubs relaxed. Their scales began to lower. Their posture eased. The aggression drained away. Lynn turned to face the assembled group. Her heart was racing, but her voice was steady. The display showed territorial markers from their homeworld. To the cubs, it was a direct threat. Another pack claiming this space as their territory. They were defending what they see as their pack's land, which now includes all of us. Commander Vexthor had arrived during the commotion. He studied the scene carefully. "You handled that well, Cadet Harper." "Thank you, sir. But this shows we need better protocols. If we're going to fully integrate the cubs, we need to screen all visual displays and environmental elements that might trigger their territorial instincts." "Agreed. Work with the Xenopsychology Department to develop those protocols." Vexthor paused, then added, "You have done well, better than I hoped." That night Lynn sat with the cubs in their habitat. They were subdued, sensing they had done something wrong even if they did not fully understand what. "It is not your fault," Lynn told them, running her hand along Kresh's back. "You were just being who you are. We are the ones who need to learn better. We need to understand what upsets you so we can avoid it." Vera made a questioning chirp. Lynn had learned this sound meant uncertainty or worry. "Yes, you are staying," Lynn assured her, somehow understanding the unspoken question. "You are not going anywhere. This is your home now. These people are your family. We will figure this out together." Thorn pushed his head under her hand, demanding attention in his typical way. Lynn smiled and obliged, scratching the spot under his jaw ridge that he loved. She thought about the past few weeks, the progress they had made, the bonds they had formed. She had come into this assignment thinking she would teach the cubs about Federation life, but they had taught her just as much. They had taught her about loyalty, about trust, about how fear and aggression were often just pain in disguise, about how patience and understanding could bridge gaps that force and control never could. As she sat there surrounded by 3 predators who could kill her without effort, but instead trusted her completely, Lynn realized something important. This was not just an assignment anymore. This was her calling. This was what she was meant to do. She had found her place in the galaxy, not as a commander or a pilot or a soldier, but as a bridge between species, as someone who could look at the scariest creatures and see the scared children underneath, as someone who could offer trust and receive it in return. The cubs settled down to sleep, their bodies warm against hers. Kresh rested his large head on her lap. Vara curled against her side. Thorn lay across her feet like a warm, scaled blanket. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be more lessons to teach, more protocols to develop, more moments when understanding broke down and had to be rebuilt. But tonight, in this quiet moment, everything was perfect. 3 cubs from a distant world had found safety. A young woman from Earth had found purpose. And somehow, across the vast differences of biology and culture and evolution, they had found each other. Outside the habitat, night cycle lights dimmed to simulate darkness. The academy grew quiet. But in one small corner, a family slept peacefully. A family that should not exist by any logical measure. A family formed not by blood or species, but by choice and trust and the simple power of understanding. 3 months after Lynn first walked into Training Bay 7, the Renault ambassadors returned to the academy. This was the moment everyone had been preparing for. The success or failure of the cultural exchange program would be decided today. The future of Federation and Renault relations hung in the balance. Ambassador Krelnath led the delegation. He was enormous, even by Renault standards, with battle scars covering his dark scales and eyes that had seen centuries of conflict and peace. Beside him walked Matriarch Selvara and Patriarch Thexnor, the cubs' parents. They had sent their children across the galaxy in an act of faith. Now they would see if that faith had been justified. "We wish to see our children," Krelnath declared, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to shake the walls. Commander Vexthor nodded respectfully. "Of course, Ambassador. Cadet Harper has prepared a demonstration of their progress." The delegation moved to the Academy's main training arena, a vast space designed for military exercises and ceremonies. Word had spread throughout the Academy. Cadets from all 17 species packed the observation galleries. Everyone wanted to see how this would end. Lynn stood in the center of the arena floor. She wore her dress uniform, the blue fabric pressed and perfect. Her hair was braided neatly. She looked calm and professional, but her heart was pounding. Everything she had worked for came down to this moment. Kresh, Vera, and Thorn stood beside her. They had grown significantly in 3 months. Each was now the size of an earth tiger, their bodies powerful and graceful. Their scales gleamed with health. Their eyes were bright and alert. They looked like the magnificent predators they were. But there was something else too, a calmness, a confidence, a sense of purpose. Lynn looked up at the galleries where the Renault delegation sat. She took a deep breath and began. "Ambassador, honored guests, members of the Academy." Her voice carried clearly through the arena. 3 months ago, I was given the honor of caring for 3 remarkable young beings. Today, I would like to show you what we have learned together. She raised her hand, palm forward. Immediately, all 3 cubs sat. Their attention focused on her completely. The arena went silent. Kresh formation. The large male moved to her left side with precision. His movements were controlled and deliberate. Vara formation. The female took position on her right, her steps quick and light. Thorn formation. The smallest cub moved to stand directly in front of Lynn, protective as always but calm. The demonstration continued. Lynn gave commands in both Federation Standard and Renault language. The cubs responded perfectly to each one. They moved through complex obstacle courses, their natural athleticism on full display but under complete control. They demonstrated problem-solving skills, working together to complete tasks that required teamwork and intelligence. Lynn called forward volunteer cadets from different species. The cubs interacted with each one appropriately. With the small, fragile species, they were gentle and careful. With the larger, stronger species, they were more playful. They had learned to adjust their behavior based on who they were with. But the most impressive part came near the end. Lynn gestured to several groups of cadets arranged around the arena. The cubs will now demonstrate advanced social integration. She gave no visible signal that the observers could see. But the 3 cubs moved away from her, each approaching a different group. They did this on their own initiative, showing they had truly learned and internalized the lessons. Kresh went to a cluster of the smallest species in the academy. Pixians, Etherians, others who barely came up to Lynn's knee, species that would naturally fear a predator his size. He moved slowly, carefully lowering his great head in the Renault gesture of peaceful greeting. A tiny Pixian cadet, her hands trembling, reached out and touched Kresh's nose. The massive predator remained perfectly still, patient, gentle, showing that he understood his own strength and would never use it to harm someone weaker. Vera approached a group of Vornian cadets who were working on puzzle boxes. She sat down next to them and began interacting with the puzzles herself. The crystalline beings and the scaled predator worked side by side, exchanging what almost looked like conversation. Different species, different worlds, different ways of thinking, but finding common ground. Thorn went to the cadets who had been most vocal about the danger the cubs posed, the ones who had protested their presence in the academy. He sat before them, not in submission but in openness, showing that he held no anger for their fear, offering a chance to see him as he really was. The arena remained silent. Every eye watched as barriers between species dissolved, as fear transformed into understanding, as 3 cubs who had been called monsters proved they were simply children who had needed someone to believe in them. Then matriarch Silvara stood. She rose from her seat in the gallery and began moving down to the arena floor. Her presence was commanding, powerful. Every movement spoke of strength and authority. Lynn felt her heart race as the matriarch approached. Silvara was even larger than her son would one day become. Her scales were darker, marked with patterns that told stories of battles and hunts. Her eyes held the weight of leadership. She stopped before Lynn, towering over the small human woman. For a long moment they looked at each other. Human and Rheinolf, 2 species separated by millions of years of evolution on worlds that could not be more different, but connected by the 3 cubs that stood between them. Then Silvara lowered her massive head and pressed it against Lynn's shoulder. The same gesture of trust her son had shown 3 months ago. The gesture that meant acceptance, respect, family. The arena erupted in sound. Not alarm this time, but amazement. Gasps and murmurs filled the space. A Rheinolf matriarch showing such vulnerability to a being she could destroy with one swipe of her claws. It was unprecedented. "You have honored our children," Silvara said, her translator carrying deep emotion. "More than that, you have honored our entire people. We sent them here hoping they would survive. You have taught them to thrive." Lynn felt tears prick her eyes. She had not cried once during the entire 3 months, staying strong for the cubs. But now, hearing these words from their mother, the emotion broke through. "They taught me just as much, matriarch," Lynn replied, her voice thick. "They showed me that trust is not about eliminating danger. It is about choosing to be vulnerable anyway. They showed me that understanding is more powerful than control. They gave me a gift I can never repay." Patriarch Thexnor joined them, and Ambassador Krelnath followed. The 3 cubs rushed to their parents with joyful sounds. Chirps and roars and rumbles of happiness. The family reunion was beautiful to watch. The cubs climbed on their parents, rubbing their heads against familiar scales, breathing in familiar scents, but after a few minutes, all 3 cubs returned to Lynn. They pressed against her, including her in their family circle. To them, she was not separate from their pack. She was part of it. "They will remain at the academy," Krelnath announced to the assembled crowd, "but only if Cadet Harper continues as their guardian. We trust no one else with our children." Commander Vexthor stepped forward. "Cadet Harper has proven herself exceptional. She will be given special status to continue her work while completing her training. The Rheinolf integration program will be established, with her methods as the foundation." As the formal demonstration ended and the crowds began to disperse, Lynn found herself surrounded by the cubs once more. Their parents stood nearby, watching with obvious approval. "Will you truly stay with them?" Silvara asked. "It is a great burden we ask you to carry. Years of your life dedicated to our children." Lynn looked at Kresh, Vera, and Thorn. She saw not the dangerous predators everyone had feared 3 months ago. She saw the children she had come to love. She thought about that first day, when a simple smile had been enough to bridge an impossible gap. "It is not a burden," Lynn replied, scratching behind Vera's ear ridges. "It is a privilege. Besides, someone has to make sure they do not cause too much trouble." Thorn made a sound that Lynn had learned meant amusement. She laughed with him, and the sound echoed through the arena. People who heard that laugh, who saw that moment, understood something profound. The galaxy was vast beyond measure, filled with countless species, each one unique and different. But beneath all those differences, there were things that remained the same. The need to be understood, the desire for connection, the power of trust freely given. Lynn Harper had shown them that sometimes the most important command was not a word or a gesture. Sometimes it was a smile that said, "I see you. I trust you. You are safe with me." The 3 predator cubs had ignored every command given to them by handlers and trainers. They had responded to force with force, to fear with aggression. But that smile had stopped them completely. Not because it demanded obedience, but because it offered something they desperately needed: understanding, acceptance, love. In giving those things to 3 scared cubs, Lynn had found her own place in the galaxy. She had become a bridge between species, living proof that compassion could cross any divide. The Galactic Naval Academy would go on to establish the Renalth Integration Program, welcoming many more cubs in the years to come. Each would be paired with a handler trained in Lynn's methods. Her papers on cross-species communication would be required reading,